in case you missed it. So we're going to talk about this article on Cosmic Book News because it just made me mad from start to finish. Okay. It talks about the Flash producer teases a DCEU reboot. Why do we need a reboot? We need a reboot because everything that was done before in the Snyderverse has not succeeded the way they wanted it to. And the funny part about that is not that it hasn't been financially successful. It's just that I guess people didn't love it the way they wanted it to. It's not that Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, and Justice League didn't make money. It's that they don't want it to just make money. They want us to love it and tell them how great it is or whatever. And I'm like, if you want us to love it and you want it to be great, then maybe you should try making the heroes like they are in the comics, you know, the versions that have existed for 80-something years. Why don't you try that? How come that's always the last resort after everything else you did has failed? Then you think you have to go back to the comic roots. Why can't you just do that the first time? So I don't care what rabid defenders of Snyderverse say. If it was so successful, they would be continuing in that vein. If Man of Steel was the right way to go, then they would have immediately produced Man of Steel 2. But they didn't. They produced Batman vs. Superman, which was a mishmash of The Dark Knight Returns and The Death of Superman, and it did neither of them well. If that was so right, and if it was the way to go, and if everything that happened in Justice League was the right thing to do, then they would be continuing in that vein. But that's not what this article says. Okay? So again, it doesn't address why they're rebooting. Why are they rebooting? If everything was so great and it's all about toxic fans and toxic man babies and we're entitled and we're not right about anything and blah, 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 blah. If that's the case, why are you rebooting? Anyway, Flash producer and sister to the director, Barbara Muschietti, seemingly teases a soft DCE reboot with mention made that the movie restarts everything. The movie restarts everything. Restarts everything. By everything, what do you mean? Do you mean the entire DC Comics extended universe or movie universe? Okay, because if that's the case, then are you hiring the same actors? Like, they would be foolish to get rid of Gal Gadot because she's been great as Wonder Woman in her second movie's coming out sometime from Christmas to whenever. And there has been great fan support for giving Henry Cavill another chance as Superman because he never was the problem. Cavill, with the right direction, I think would make a perfect Superman. He would have made a perfect Superman and will make a good one going into the future. So when it says it restarts everything, because if you're restarting with the same actors, that's not quite everything. If you're putting the same actors in more traditional versions of the characters in a different universe, is that what you mean? So she goes, well, I want you to go see it, so I'm not going to tell you a lot, but what I will tell you that it's a ride. What I will tell you that, is what's supposed to be there. But what I will tell you is that it's a ride. Okay. It's going to be fun and exciting, and there are a lot of DC characters in it. Okay, very generic words. Flash is the superhero of this film because he is the bridge between all of these characters and timelines. Maybe. And in a way, it restarts everything. It doesn't forget anything. Barbara Muschietti cryptically revealed during today's DC Fandome panel for The Flash. Okay, just hold up. And in a way, it restarts everything. Okay, that's even more vague. What way? Yeah, I know you want us to see it, but that doesn't mean it's good. And it says it doesn't forget anything. Yeah, that's a bunch of bantha poodoo. Okay, you guys don't know what to do with the characters you already have. And you're talking about it doesn't forget anything. What does that mean? Do you mean it doesn't forget anything from the Snyderverse? Because I want to remind you of some glaring omissions. The biggest glaring omission that you have in the DC Extended Universe is the absence of Green Lanterns on a continual basis. We got a very brief glimpse of a Green Lantern in the opening sequence of Justice League, where they're fighting Steppenwolf for the first time, and that's the first and last time we've seen, besides the Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds, which failed spectacularly, okay, that we've seen a lantern in action. Green Lantern has been a part of the Justice League since the beginning. He was in their first appearance when they fought Starro. Okay? I know you say it's Starro, but Superman says it's Starro. That's why I say it that way. So, so that's a glaring omission. Another huge glaring omission is the Marvels, because DC's New 52 Shazam is not Captain Marvel. And the Shazamily, all those new people with, Freddie Freeman being a long-haired blonde dude, whatever. Those are not the Marvels. Okay? They haven't been included either. New 52 Shazam is a completely different character based on Captain Marvel mythology, but not the same thing at all. So when it's talking about it doesn't forget anything, you've already forgotten just how these characters started, and you never understood why they were popular. So whatever she's talking about it doesn't forget anything, after using very generic terms like, that it's a ride, okay, fun and exciting, okay, there are a lot of DC characters in it, okay. So does that mean it's going to be like Justice League Unlimited? Something like that? If you had done it right the first time, if you had established Superman as the Superman that we know, and you weren't so hell-bent on making a Superman year one, where everything is dark and the palette is washed out, and the parallels to the Christ figure, of course they're there, but they're so heavy-handed that a lot of people got tired of seeing them. And you had Pa Kent say maybe he should have let a school bus full of kids die, and Pa Kent allowed himself to die, rather than reveal Clark's secret, when Clark could have zipped him out of that tornado without anybody seeing him, because, oh yeah, Superman has super speed. Okay? So you're talking about you don't forget anything. But if you had done it right the first time and established him as the man we know, we get a brief glimpse of that when Superman is resurrected in Justice League. He's smiling. He's talking about justice. He has his speed back. He has his strength back. And his costume is lighter. Those are all tacit admissions that the way you did it before wasn't working. So how can you say you don't forget anything? But anyway, Flash is the superhero of this film because he's the bridge between all these characters and timelines. And no, I'm going to get to that in a minute. Okay, as the movie will feature the return of the Michael Keaton Batman as well as Ben Affleck as Batman, Barbara Muschietti also revealed that Ezra Miller's Barry Allen will serve as the link between the timelines. Okay, once again, remember that just because people talk to you like you're stupid, it doesn't mean that you are actually stupid. Okay, what is their fallback position whenever they get in trouble? Whenever they get in trouble, just add more Batman. Okay, that's the way they think this goes. That's what they think the right thing to do is. That's why they do it every time. So we have Robert Pattinson's Batman, the Matt Reeves film, Pattinson. We have Keaton coming back, which we've been crying for years. And hopefully this is a bridge to old Bruce and Batman Beyond. But we also have Ben Affleck returning. Okay, so the only thing missing is Conroy, or I guess if you want to bring Val Kilmer or George Clooney back, but that's all supposed to be the same universe. The Burton-Schumacher universe is all supposed to be the same universe. But anyway, so they went from, we can't use Batman on TV because audiences would get confused by a TV Batman and a movie Batman at the same time, and Batman makes more money in movies. They went, we can't do all that. Then Gotham had a bit of a tease, and now all of a sudden, it's every Batman ever. Okay? This is just like Lucasfilm and Star Wars. There's no real plan. You're just kind of making it up as you go. The Flash is confirmed to be a DC multiverse movie, as the film has been described as following Barry Allen breaking the bonds of physics to crash into various parallel dimensions where Barry will encounter different versions of DC superheroes, and also that Barry goes back in time to save his mother, which causes changes to the timeline where the Flash connects to a new universe, the Michael Keaton Batman '89 universe. Director Andy Muschietti also again confirmed the movie is inspired by the Flashpoint story, but previously he teased it will be a different version of Flashpoint than you're expecting. Okay. If it's supposed to be a DC multiverse movie, we saw that in the CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths. That's probably the most ambitious thing they've ever done in terms of giving us a taste of the multiverse, because just about every universe we've seen on screen from DC was included or hinted at in the CW Crisis on Infinite Earths. And by the time it got through, a lot of Earths were merged, but we still had a multiverse, because so far Stargirl is not on the same Earth as Barry and Kara and the main Earth where those Earths got merged. We knew they were going to put Supergirl on Flash's Earth some kind of way. We knew they weren't going to keep her separate, because that was just ridiculous in the first place. But there's still a multiverse out there. It's just that the main heroes in the Arrowverse don't know yet, supposedly. I don't know what they're doing on Legends, so maybe they've discovered it there, or maybe they will. But Black Lightning and Supergirl and the Flash all being on the same Earth, and of course Arrow and the Black Canaries, Arrow and the Canaries, whatever they're going to do there, that always made sense. Okay, so we knew that's where they were going. But when he says that is inspired by Flashpoint, no, that is Flashpoint. Barry goes back in time to save his mom. And by the way, Barry Allen did not have a tragic backstory. That's a retcon, where all of a sudden they decided he needed to be more tragic. So they had Zoom go back in time and kill his mom. And I also want to state unequivocally that that means that in the original timeline, Barry Allen became the Flash with his parents doing just fine or his mom doing just fine. It did not require the death of his mother for Barry to become a hero. That's Batman. Okay? That's Spider-Man. It did not require the death of Barry's mother for him to become the Flash. Barry became the Flash because after his accident, he discovered he had the speed powers, and he actually got inspired by the Golden Age Flash, Jay Garrick, and decided to use his newfound powers to fight crime as a superpowered speedster. Costume speedster, okay? It didn't have anything to do with his mother being murdered. That's a retcon. And now all of a sudden people thinking that it sticks because it's been reframed to say that if Barry goes back in time to save his mom, it causes so much damage as if it was a pivotal point in the timeline. But I will repeat, it was never a point in the timeline originally. So how come undoing it causes all this damage? Doesn't make any sense. I never thought that made any sense. It doesn't make any sense now. So when he says it's inspired, no, that's Flashpoint. Barry goes back to save his mom, and then a whole bunch of things unravel, and the world changes around him. And he meets Thomas Wayne Batman, and he begins to lose his memory of the original timeline, only to find out that Professor Zoom, remember that in the comics, Professor Zoom is Eobard Thawne. I know on the TV show they're two separate characters. Zoom from Earth 2 with the black uniform and Tony Todd voices him is separate from Reverse Flash, which is most of the time played by Tom Cavanaugh and Matt Lesher. But in the comics, Professor Zoom is Eobard Thawne, is Reverse Flash. It's all one character, the same character. Finding out that because Barry didn't really know how to control his time travel, or because he really didn't understand the effect, kind of the, when you have a blast of wind or a gust of wind or wind racing at 200 miles per hour, it leaves destruction behind it. And so they tried to say that Barry doing that in the timeline splintered it, and all these different things happened or whatever. But Barry Allen's been traveling back in time since his first or second issue, if I recall, because he uses the treadmill, either in the first issue or the second issue where the Silver Age Flash appears. So all of this stuff about his mom having to die and his time traveling being done so poorly that it wreaks all this havoc is a retcon, okay? It hasn't always been the case. But that is not in this description of the movie is not inspired by Flashpoint. That is Flashpoint, okay? And then he's going to connect to the Batman 89 universe. Now, we are probably going to see two things in this movie. We're probably going to see, number one, the scene in, what was it, Batman versus Superman, where Bruce is having the dream and Flash is speaking to him from a time vortex, where it looks like a dream, but he's actually in a timeline and he's not quite sure at what point he's intercepting Bruce. We're probably going to see that from the other side. And I always hated that scene because that's not Barry Allen. He doesn't look like Barry at all. He looks like some dude that I didn't even recognize. I'm like, that's not Flash. Anyway, yes, I am a stickler for characters having good book-to-screen translations. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that because I talk about it all the time. And then we're probably going to see the other side of the CW scene where the Ezra Miller Flash, the one from the DCEU, connects with the CW Flash, Grant Gustin, Barry Allen of the Arrowverse, because they had a great scene there. We're probably going to see that from the other side, okay? But if, they said it has a lot of DC characters, if it's nothing but winks, if it's nothing but, chances for cameos, not that won't be fun to watch and maybe good to see, depending on who the characters are, because you know who I'm hoping to see. I'm hoping to see who I always want to see. I want to see the Marvels, Captain Marvel Mary, and Captain Marvel Jr. Freddy, not the Shazam family. I'm hoping to see the Creeper and the Metal Men. I would love to see them. I talk about that all the time. Follow me on Twitter, DT2 Comics Chat, if you're not already. But, again, it's just another way to kind of add more Batman. And if it's just a bunch of winks, just a bunch of cameos, we need a story. And if it's just Barry goes back in time, tries to save his mom, it doesn't work out. We've seen that story. That's the basis of the first season of The Flash. And that's the basis of the third season where they do kind of their version of Flashpoint. That's the basis of the comic book. We've seen that story. Okay, but he says it will be a different version of Flashpoint than you're expecting. How do they know what we're expecting? Do they mean that we want a panel-by-panel recreation of the Flashpoint story? Because we don't. If they don't do the Atlantis-Themyscira War, that's fine. If Wonder Woman and Aquaman aren't, warring, if they both have become dictators, however, that will need some explaining. And the Batman we want to see, of course, is Thomas Wayne Batman. Thomas Wayne Batman became so popular, he got folded into regular continuity, which is normally what happens. Because Thomas Wayne Batman is a different version than Bruce. He's not as good as Bruce in any area, not as good of a fighter, not nearly as good of a detective, and not nearly as good with tech. But what he is more brutal and much more bottom line. He kills. He doesn't have a problem with killing. He doesn't have a problem with beating you to death, dropping you off of a building. He doesn't care. Because Thomas Wayne, in the Flashpoint universe, it wasn't Bruce's parents that died. It was Martha and Bruce. No, excuse me, it was just Bruce. Because Martha actually becomes the Joker of the Flashpoint universe. So it's Bruce that dies instead of his parents. And so they both have different reactions to it. Martha just snaps and becomes the Joker, which is actually a really good story and some really eerie panels, but they're really, really good. But Thomas just becomes brutal. So he's even more about venting his anger at the loss of his son. He's even more about how he feels about the world. He's even more in his feelings than Bruce was. It's really something. And he has a red motif mixed in with the gray and the black, as opposed to just the gray and the black or Bruce's blue and gray and black motif with the yellow utility belt. So he became so popular because he's just really more gritty. And just like with so many alternate universe characters, he does so many of the things that you wish Batman would do. And so he's just a great character. So that's the one we're expecting to see. So I do hope they include him. Barry goes and finds the Batman of that world, which turns out to be Thomas Wayne. because he has to get his powers back because he doesn't have his speed when he arrives there, and he's losing his memory. So he's got to, flash back up. He's got to speed up, and he's got to be sure he corrects the timeline before he forgets it altogether. So that's the basic Flashpoint story. So I'm just wondering what they mean when they say it's going to be a different version. Because that literally could mean anything. Anything. If they're smart, they might throw the crime syndicate in there, but I guess you can tell by my tone and my attitude in this video, I don't really have a lot of confidence that this is going to be good. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Did you hear me say that? I hope I'm wrong. I hope that they prove me wrong. I hope that this is just a movie that blows us all away and surprises us pleasantly because it's such a well-done story and because it's so well thought out and because the characters are accurate and because it gives us a beginning, middle, and an end. And it's not just a status quo or a reset at the end, but there's actually some interesting things going on. Okay? Might be cool even if they incorporate Stargirl. Okay? Check out the concept art below featuring the Michael Keaton Batman and the new suit for Ezra Miller, released at the first DC Fandome virtual convention. Right here, I suppose. So, to me, that's another tacit admission of failure because nobody liked that original Flash costume. It didn't make any sense. The armor was straight out of Injustice, but it also had some parts that looked like they were sewed together, like it was being held together by cat wire or piano wire or whatever. I'm like, what? What is that doing on the Flash costume? If you know anything about the Flash, you know anything that, like any other runner, Barry wants to travel light. So the costume needs to be spandex or form-fitting, and it needs to have, as few extras as possible because he doesn't need wind resistance. He has that aura that protects him against friction. But of course, he doesn't want to make it harder for him to move at his, impossible speeds. Any runner would want to have a streamlined, stripped down costume to make it easier not to generate wind resistance or extra friction or whatever. So that original armored costume everybody was scratching their heads like, what in the world? So once again, that's another tacit admission of failure that you didn't get it. You didn't get who the Flash is, and don't even get me started on the fact that Ezra Miller is not Barry Allen. His characterization of the Flash, as we see, was basically if Peter Parker was the Flash, and Peter Parker as written by Joss Whedon. So Whedonized version of Peter Parker became the Flash. That's who the extended universe Flash has always been. We still don't have a blonde Barry Allen in live action, and no, I'm not going to let that go because it's ridiculous. And we still don't have a properly characterized Barry Allen because I love Grant Gustin and I love his Flash, but he's always been more like Wally, the traditional Wally West. He's always been more like that than Barry. And Ezra Miller is not Barry at all in any way, shape, or form. Not visually, not physically, not in personality, not in portrayal, not in characteristics. They don't even have flash facts. They don't even have a Barry that studies his speed, that masters his speed, that learns the new things from the Speed Force, that knows how to use his speed as more than a defensive weapon, but also a proactive or an offensive weapon. Just so many different things that the Flash has always known how to do, that Jay Garrick knows how to do. And we thought that Jay was going to teach Barry those things, but he kind of stumbles into some of them on the CW show. But we haven't seen any of that in the extended universe. So, once again. So, see, you can't start wrong. You can't be wrong from the jump and end right without course correction. And keeping Ezra Miller in this role just does not make me excited about it because he was the wrong fit from the jump. And he's not Barry. Sorry. So it says the Flash opens June 3rd, 2022. And Warner Brothers has also confirmed other members of the Justice League for the movie, including possibly Cyborg Ray Fisher. Do you know what that means? That means that not only is it not going to be a Flash movie, but Flashpoint, with a lot of cameos and winks, is also going to be probably a soft Justice League 2, which, Marvel's Captain America Civil War was a bunch of different movies. It was Black Panther Begins. It was Avengers 3. It was Winter Soldier 2. It was a bunch of different films. Okay? Well, that's what this sounds like. This is not going to be a Flash movie. This is going to be a movie, a DC Universe movie with a bunch of cameos where maybe the Flash is maybe the main character. Maybe. But mark my words, if Thomas Wayne Batman shows up, especially if he's played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, he's going to steal the show. Because Batman almost always steals the show. Keaton is going to steal the show. If we go to watch this movie, it's going to be for Keaton. It's not going to be for Flash, which is a shame. But it doesn't feel like really it's going to be a Flash movie. It just feels like, you know, they're going to put all these characters in or whatever. And again, if the story's good, that can work. But if there's no story, I just don't have a lot of confidence in this thing going in. So those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours. Leave me some comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. And that's it for the latest episode of In Case You Missed It.